Austin, Kyle, welcome to the InnoFrontier podcast. We're excited to talk to a bunch of different tech leaders in the space, and both of you have an incredible experience from working at some of the most established companies while also working at small startups, which is kind of a duality that not a lot of people experience in their careers, let alone at the exact same time. So excited to dive into it. But first, I'd love to know a little bit about how you guys met.
Sure. Yeah, I can take that. Austin and I met in college our freshman year. We were both in the same fraternity, and then we both studied the same major, informatics, at the University of Washington. And we've been 3 years out of college now and friends ever since.
Oh, that's awesome. And how old were you guys when you started to get into technology? I mean, Austin, I did see on your LinkedIn that you were a lifeguard, not so much, related to technology, but at what point, Austin, did you start to get interested in technology?
Yeah, for me, it was right about when I entered into college. I think the funny part is I think I introduced a lot of this stuff that we were working on to Kyle. So I helped him get into his major. So that was really cool. But yeah, right when I entered college, I kind of knew that working with data and working in kind of the data science space or something adjacent was going to be kind of my lifelong passion. I think I knew that all the stuff that I did in my free time, like whether I was analyzing sales of different things on like gaming marketplaces or whatever, I just knew that like if that's what I want to do in my free time, that's what I want to do for my job too.
And so at what point, along that big data route, did you get your first job?
My first internship that I had was after my freshman year of college. I worked for a land development company, and so I was working on doing some web scraping projects for them, scraping public records off of like the county databases and getting records together and compiling analyses of like land purchases of our competitors and everything like that. So that was like the first kind of real experience I had within the real world.
Oh, that's awesome. And so Kyle, Austin was saying that he kind of introduced you a little bit more to technology. So tell us a little bit about your journey.
Yeah, so I think I found my niche a little bit later than Austin did. It was closer to junior year. I started taking more classes in the UX area, so I really loved working with customers and finding pain points. And by extension of that, I started working more with the UX side of things. So it was around then that I started building my own apps. I built mobile apps and web apps, and I was just, build an MVP, show some friends, find out what didn't work, take it back to the drawing board. And I've been doing that pretty much ever since.
So what was your very first project that you did?
Oh man, it was in April of 2020. It was a COVID tracker. So pretty popular API was just sent out. You could see the different, trends of COVID all around the world. So me and a friend built just a little dashboard to view that.
And so then, Austin, what was your first project that you ever worked on, or was it the internship?
There was a project before that actually got me the internship. Our university had like a course, they call it the course evaluation catalog, where you could go and see like students' reviews of different classes, and the data was all publicly, or not publicly, but available to anyone within the university. But all of the data like was really hard to parse through. There's not like one like specific, like there's no way to filter any of it. So I built a web scraper. That was my first introduction to Python, really, and that was building that to essentially determine like what classes are people recommending. Where are the classes that might be easy. Because as a student, that's what you're also focused on, also. And so taking that route was kind of my first introduction into it, and that's kind of what got me into the web scraping position at the land development company.
And then at what point did Boeing factor into everything that you were doing?
Yeah, so I think that was during my junior year or so. I had an introduction through one of my professors, my database professor, and he had some students that had graduated and come back and said, we need some undergrads to work on some projects. And so I worked with the Boeing Advanced Research division of them, and and that was my first time introduction into computer vision. And so we just took some CT scans and microstructure imagery of some various like machined parts, and they were trying to determine if if the failure rates were predictable from those CT scans and everything like that. And so I used various open CV libraries in Python and everything to get a basic understanding of the computer vision world. And that was kind of where I kind of found my passion in the computer vision industry.
So, Kyle, you were doing a lot of projects and you were kind of talking about the iterative process of finding ideas and discarding ideas by getting market feedback. Was it that moment where you kind of realized, oh, I'm pretty entrepreneurial? Or what was it that was kind of the catalyst that made you look at yourself and be like, oh, I think I'm not just an engineer, I'm also an entrepreneur?
That is a fantastic question. And honestly, I think I really found it almost by mistake. So I was making apps over time, and one of them that I made was called Mixins, essentially a cocktail journal. So, you could create a drink, write down the ingredients, and then post that on your own like little wall. But there was nothing social about it. And then a company from New Jersey came to me, saw it, and said that they liked that, but they wanted to make it a social media on top of it. So this company named Bartego was like, what if everyone had their own feed and they could all share their different drinks together, comment on them, like them, and whatnot. So working through them and as a freelance developer, designer, and pretty much salesperson, it was really great to get to wear all those hats. And I realized that there was so much more impact that you can have outside of just being an engineer in just one single role. So yeah. Since then, I've been at Microsoft for 3 years, and it's great being a developer, but I definitely miss that itch, to be able to do it all.
For sure. And before we hop into your Microsoft experience, Austin, what was it for you that kind of made you realize, oh, I'm not just an engineer, I'm also an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I think I kind of agree with Kyle. I also kind of fell into it. I if you asked me growing up, like, would I want to have my own company or whatever, I'd say no. And it wasn't really until I saw the idea that later became RoundNet AI that I kind of decided, like, okay, wow, like there's actually something here. There's something that doesn't exist today that I could help create. And it wasn't like, obviously, like the whole like monetization side of everything came a lot later. But just the kind of the starting idea of like, there's something that doesn't exist today that I can help create. That was kind of when the light bulb kind of flipped on my head. I said, oh, I wonder if this is something that's feasible in the longer run.
Awesome. So Kyle, tell us a little bit about the application process to Microsoft, the interview process. What was it like to kind of go through that and to actually get a job over at Microsoft?
Yeah, sure. It's pretty standard. I think that one big help that got me into the door was all of the projects on my GitHub. So I made sure that all of the apps that I worked on were publicly available, and that I was like consistently, doing work outside of school. But after I got my first interview accepted, I did a quick 30-minute rounds, which was more just like qualitative, just kind of talking through a big problem, but not very technical. And then I got accepted through that, and then I had 4 hours of interviews. So there's 4 different technical questions between 4 different interviewees, and a month later, got the job.
That's great. And tell us a little bit about what it's been like working there, and also what projects you're working on.
Yeah, sure. So my time at Microsoft has been interesting. I think most new hires that come from college are just placed on any random team. So my first was with Microsoft Federal, working on like security applications for our government like companies. And that wasn't a great fit because it wasn't really using the tech stack that I knew, and it wasn't really UX work. So a year in, I actually switched teams, and now I'm working on Bing, and more specifically, Bing Enterprise Search. So it's been really exciting the last year, with the OpenAI, like working with them and being able to apply a lot of their AI algorithms into our chat platform.
Oh, it's really exciting. Anything you can tell us about anything interesting that's coming down that, maybe out, or, anything interesting that you're working on that you can talk about?
Sure, yeah. I probably shouldn't talk about the future, but what I can say is that we have a really exciting platform, pretty much for any enterprise tenant, any company that has the Microsoft 365 suite will also get Bing Chat or specifically Copilot, and that'll use all of your data between Teams and Outlook and what have you, and you can use like the GPT AI on top of that to be able to search through any of your documents or any of the messages that you might have through your work.
Well, that's uber exciting.
Yeah.
And then, Austin, tell us a little bit about MossAdams. There's actually an office here in Salt Lake from MossAdams. I mean, huge company, been around for a long time. Tell us a little about them and why you chose MossAdams to work with.
Yeah. So my senior year or so, or I guess right around the COVID time, I was supposed to have an internship with MossAdams, and I was supposed to be a business intelligence analyst. Intern was the title, and eventually got canceled because of COVID. And I managed to basically keep the contact around for the next year while I was waiting or applying for my full-time positions. Again, COVID was still kind of very much in the forefront of everyone's mind at the time. And so it was kind of hard to find a position just, I think, across the board. And so I reached back out to my contact that I had there, and I said, hey, is there any option or a possibility that this position is still available? They said yes, did the full gauntlet of interviews and everything. And then eventually, became a developer for them. The interesting part about that is, MossAdams, they are mainly doing financial consulting and auditing. And being a developer, it's kind of, I'm like the bastard child of this whole organization. Like, there's not many developers across this board. And so it's been interesting to kind of be a consultant, which is someone I never thought I was going to be growing up. I was like, I saw the consultancies at the interview fairs and everything, and said, I don't want to do that. And here we are. But it's been a lot of fun, and I've been able to work on a couple different really big platforms that we've developed, and so it's been just kind of cool to see like this from the inside out. So yeah.
Oh, that's great. And what part of do you work on the actual application, or are you more ad hoc and working on a bunch of different things, kind of whatever they need?
Yeah, so our group specifically focuses on equity management software.
Oh.
So think a lot of the big companies have a lot of stock that they have to give to their employees. And so we work with a lot of big clients in order to manage that flow of information. So when an employee receives a stock vest or a grant, it goes into our software. We manage it for the duration of the vest. And then once it eventually gets sold through Morgan Stanley, Fidelity, something like that, that also gets tracked. And so there's some large record keeping systems that we've been able to create for some very large companies, just to manage that whole process and make sure that the employees get the stock on time and the correct amount in taxes paid and everything like that. So yeah.
Well, even as a small company, I can attest to that's still a nightmare. So I can only imagine what happens when you have like 1,000 employees and having to manage that. Oof. Mm-hmm. So, Austin, take us through the initial idea and like the process you went through to create RoundNet.
Yeah. So for those that aren't maybe aware of RoundNet, or more commonly known as Spikeball, it's a sport that you have probably seen at a park or a beach, where there's a little like trampoline almost that looks like it's on the ground, and you hit a ball onto it, and you kind of have rallies back and forth, kind of like volleyball a little bit. So if you've seen it, you're aware. But so kind of where this all started is I started playing somewhat competitively through our school's club program. There's a large group of people that played, and so I just kind of joined in because I always loved playing the game. And so it wasn't until like probably a couple of years being into that program where after going through the whole Boeing thing and having the computer vision experience, I kind of said, like, I wonder if any of this is possible to like track analytics and stuff for this sport. Obviously, the sport's really small, relatively speaking, and so there wasn't anything like that available at the time. There still not really is anything like it. But I kind of just said, let's give it a shot. Let's spend some time. It originally started like the first idea started during a spring break trip that was canceled. So like I was staying at home. I had nothing better to do for a whole week, and so I said, okay, let's just sit down and develop some software to see if any of these stats are trackable. Started from like a drone view of a top down, and so it made it a little bit easier. Progressively just kept adding more features, and stats to the point where it was like, I think I was like a year and a half into this project of like just adding things and trying to see, what would work and what wouldn't, that I kind of went along and said like, okay, maybe there's actually something here. And it took that long to really kind of get through that process. And the other thing I'll say too is there was a RoundNet podcast that I was listening to, and they were pitching like ideas of the sport to each other on this podcast. And so one of the ideas they pitched to each other was like, oh, what if you could just like take a video of your game that you play, and then it chops it all up for you, and then like gets rid of all the dead time from the video and everything like that. And I thought to myself, I was like, wait, I literally already have like all of that technology. So like, why not just try and apply it? And so that's where that's where I brought in Kyle. I said, okay, let's make an app. I want to get this off the ground. And I think this is like a really cool idea that I think a lot of people could use, just because I knew like, if these three people who are really deep into the community like really want this, then I know other people are going to want it too.
And Kyle, what was it that kind of was the tipping point for you wanting to join on to this? Obviously you've been working on it for a year and a half. You could see it. I know you like the sport, but what was it that really made you want to join?
Oh man. I mean, what's not to like about it? It is so fun. Like, I guess what I saw was just Austin's passion, and just that working with such a small community and helping them improve like their game and just improve the community in general would be a great opportunity. I love building apps. I love the sport, and I just haven't regretted it.
So how have you both managed to do a startup while working at, pretty large demanding jobs?
Yeah. For me, it's definitely been like, once I'm off at 5, like I'm spending the next 5 hours coding a lot of days. And so I'll get off, eat something real quick, and then sit right back down on my personal computer to just do as much development work as I can. So it's definitely a grind, but it hasn't felt like one because I've been enjoying what I'm doing. Obviously some days it feels like a grind, but those are few and far between nowadays. So for me, I don't think I could have done it this long if it wasn't something I was super passionate about. I think Kyle could say the same thing, but like, it's what keeps me going is just knowing that like, in the worst case scenario, like this project is like a great experience that I can throw on a resume. Like I know that if eventually I want to become like, really deep into the computer vision community, that like these types of projects are what are going to help me get there. And so at the very least, like it's a great resume booster. At the very best, it like can become a full-time job. And so that's kind of what's kept me going this whole time.
That's great.
I think I can add on top of that. Just that I've learned over time that a lot of the time the end result is never as good as the journey, and getting to work on it every single day is just so fun. Even if, like, let's say worst case scenario, no one picks it up or no one even uses it, I won't consider it wasted time at all. I think working on RoundNet is more fun than playing video games or reading a book, and honestly I look forward to it. So yeah, that's what keeps me going.
Well, that's really powerful. And that's how you know you're onto something. Because if you can love something so much, clearly other people will. Which kind of leads me to my next question is, so like, the RoundNet community is growing a lot, and it doesn't look like it's slowing down. I was actually looking at a little bit of statistics before, and it feels like it's almost exponential in terms of growth, but not just here in the States, but even worldwide. There's some communities popping up in like Australia and some in South Africa. As you guys look at your goals, up and coming, here over the next year, 2 years, what are some of the hopes that you have for addressing, for being able to capitalize on this sport kind of taking off?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think like for some of our immediate goals, like there's some features obviously that we want to push out, but with the sport growing as fast as it is, like Kyle, do you know off the top of your head how many countries we've already had downloads from?
Over 30, and we definitely have Instagram followers from all over the world. We get new ones every single day.
Yeah. So it's kind of cool that like, there's people in 30 different countries or more, that are downloading this random app that we've made. And like we've already worked with, there's a tournament that was hosted in Germany this year, that they contacted us and said, we want to try and get this app that you've built. We want to integrate it live into our broadcast that we have. And so we worked with them and set up a whole live feed system, so they were able to use some of that for their broadcast, which was that was like one of the really cool things that I'd like to do a lot more of, and just say like um, really helping the people that are maybe not super competitive, but seeing it from the outside and saying, wow, this sport's like, this is a real like 2020 sport. Like they've got the analytics, like they're doing like some of these other sports. Like I know tennis has Swing Vision, which is another analytics app for tennis. But like some of these sports that have been along or been together for so much longer don't have this type of technology. And so, I think people are excited just to see that it's like the new thing, and still like can take all the new technology and apply it. So I'm hoping to just do a lot more of that in the next year or two. Kyle, I'll let you speak to what you're kind of looking forward to as well.
Yeah, I don't know if I can add much to that other than just getting it in people's hands. Like like Austin said, like we've been discussing, we have downloads from all these countries, but it's usually just one or two. Now I think it's time to really dive deep into our marketing and into our sales, find out who downloaded it and why, and if they're in a club, maybe they can refer some friends, and then they can all use the app together. Um, we want to make it accessible to everyone in the world, especially just because why not? Like we can bring everyone together.
Mm-hmm. Well, the only other thing I'll add too is I think one of our goals is to become profitable, as every startups is, right? So luckily we've built our kind of back end technology to be pretty scalable at a pretty low fixed cost. And so right now, like if no one's using the app, like we're basically not getting charged anything for server hostings at all. So pretty much all serverless architecture, which has enabled us to really like grow at our own pace, which obviously, as Kyle said, we want to grow a lot faster, but it's allowed us to just kind of only focus on just that growth at that speed. So yeah, so we're close. I want to say like at least to cover the server costs, we're like only 5 or 6 users away from like being profitable just from the base app to server costs. But yeah, in terms of like being able to pay us any money, we're pretty far away from that. So I'm looking forward to that as well.
Oh, of course. Well, just out of curiosity, did you guys go with the React Native route with your apps?
Yeah, our stack is React Native and AWS.
Sweet. Yeah, that's great. Well, guys, seriously, congrats on everything that you've accomplished thus far. I think that it is very admirable that you're able to manage maintaining this app and pushing it forward and maintaining your full-time jobs and giving everything there. Definitely not easy. Certainly wasn't something I was able to do. So congratulations on everything, guys. And we're really rooting for you. And really appreciate you guys coming on the podcast.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for having us.
absolutely. It's been a pleasure.
Hey, you bet. We'll talk to you guys again soon.
Yep. Bye.
Bye, Jeff.